Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Shuzo Brad Furman. I'm one of the priests in training at the Dragonfly Sangha, and I wanted to continue our discussions on the six paramitas, or the bodhisattva perfections. As Shuzo Mike and Sensei Tony have been talking about also over the past several weeks. And tonight I want to talk about the paramita of wisdom, or Prajna, as it's called. And before I get into Prajna, just to recap on the paramitas, these are not perfections in that, these are things that you're going to perfect or achieve, and you say, oh, well, I've perfected these things, or now that I'm perfect and I'm an enlightened being, I can just do these things at will, right? It's more about the practice of these paramitas, almost like spiritual muscle memory, in that the more that you do them, the more naturally they'll come into your interactions with others without thinking, right? They just become a part of how you live. And as I said last time, one of the descriptions that I love about the paramitas is that whenever you practice these six perfections, you're bringing a little bit of bodhisattva behavior into the world, right? I really like that. Another way to think about it is we Buddhism, we offer a lot of incense. We burn a lot of incense. And the way that we sometimes talk about burning incense is that, it represents the fact that the world is burning, that everything is on fire, right? And when we burn, we want to give off a sweet smell, incense, right? And our temple, the Tonboji temple, or a house of meditation, you walk in and you can instantly smell the decades and the thousands of sticks of incense that have been burned there, and you can instantly tell, right? Oh wow, I noticed this, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to leave that fragrance on the air through these behaviors. And as someone who lives in the country, I know the opposite of good smells, right? I can step outside my door and sniff air different times throughout the year and know exactly what the farmers are up to, right? And so we want to practice these behaviors to improve the air quality for those around us, right? So let's talk a bit about prajna, or wisdom. The Sanskrit word for this paramita is prajna. The Pali word is pana. You'll sometimes hear it referred to. And it's typically translated as wisdom, or non-dual awareness, right? So this sense of oneness. And wisdom in this context is not, the acquisition of facts, and it's not all of the knowledge that you get when you study Buddhism for a time. And we certainly have our fair share of teachings and lists and things like that were designed to be remembered easily. The Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the Five Skandhas, the Six Paramitas, Dharma, dependent origination, all of these things. It's very easy to learn these things. But wisdom in this sense is not acquisitive. It's not you acquiring something and, oh, now I know this thing and I've acquired this wisdom. Wisdom in this sense is actually it's the opposite. It's stripping away from delusion, and specifically the delusions and afflictions that prevent us from waking up to the reality that everything is one. And last week, I love that Shuzo Mike referred to delusion as not seeing things right. Right? And that's essentially what it is that we're talking about. And this practice of wisdom helps us to see things right, to see things as they really are. Now, one of the Buddhist teachings that applies really well in this this practice of prajna are the three marks existence. And I want to talk very briefly about the three marks of existence, and then our principles of oneness, which are our order's expression, or kind of a extension of these marks of existence. So there's this notion in Buddhism that there are three things that are true about all reality. Suffering exists, or this teaching of dukkha, that there's this sense of unsatisfactoriness, that nothing is permanent, that all things are impermanent, this teaching of anicca, and then lastly, that there's no separate or permanent self, or anatta. And our three principles of oneness in our order sort of build on that by saying that out of these marks of existence arise these opportunities to act, and out of suffering, out of the fact that everyone is suffering, that everyone is burning like incense, like I mentioned earlier. But out of that suffering comes compassion and the ability to act compassionately for those folks, because we understand that they and we are suffering. And out of that impermanence and the fact that nothing lasts forever arises opportunities for creative change, that we can do something about that, that we can take action, that when one thing falls away or one thing ends, that we can do something, for the benefit of others and to relieve their suffering. And that out of that lack of a permanent and separate self, in that emptiness of permanence or lack of permanence, is this connection to everyone, this clarity that we're all together in this. And sometimes you'll hear folks refer to prajna as the wisdom of emptiness. Shunyata is a word that we use a lot of times in Buddhism to talk about this emptiness. And shunyata, or emptiness, can be kind of a tricky word. I know it has been for me. Because you think about when something's empty, oh, I feel empty, right? Thinking that I'm having a lousy day, nothing's going right. I have no energy. I'm feeling just drained, and that's not what we mean by emptiness here. What we mean when we talk about emptiness is that all phenomena, everything, is empty of anything that makes it separate or permanent, right? So we sometimes refer to shunyata, or emptiness, as spaciousness, this possibility or indivisibility, that nothing is separate, right? And that if there is anything that could separate us from one another or make us believe that we are going to last forever as we are, and that we're all apart from each other, that stuff doesn't exist, right? And one of the sutras that we will oftentimes encounter when we're talking about emptiness or shunyata and this prajna paramita is the Prajna Paramita Sutra, or Heart Sutra, as it's called, which is sort of a line-by-line takedown, saying that, look, there's nothing that exists on its own. Not the, it talks about the five skandhas, so it's saying form, nor sensation, nor perception, volition, consciousness, none of these things, or the sense organs that can pick up on these different things, or any of these phenomena, are separate. They're empty of separateness, and so all one, and that nothing exists by itself. And that's a common thought. And I'll talk in a little bit about what it means to live in that way when you believe that you're separate, us versus them, versus what it's like to live in a way when you realize that we're all in this together. And another way that we sometimes talk about wisdom in this sense of prajna is it's symbolized as a sword that cuts through delusion. Right? And it's kind of an intense imagery, right? That there's this sword, this weapon, this tool that's made for cutting. And sometimes you'll see this sword of wisdom in Buddhist art or sculpture in the form of a character named Fudo. And Fudo is this very intense looking guy with, sharp teeth and an angry expression, and sometimes there's skulls and a third eye on the forehead and things like that. And I have a very cute looking Fudo, and I'll see if I can get him into the camera. But so still very intense look on his eyes or in his face, and you see there he has this little sword of wisdom meant to cut through delusion, right? And it's easy to live in that world where we think it's us versus them, and they're there and I'm here and I'm by myself and I'm safe and no one can bother me, and this is going to be like this forever. It says no, not separate. You are not alone. You are not apart. You are connected. And similarly, when things are going bad and we're thinking, oh man, like no one cares, no one's gone through this stuff before, I'm all alone, I'm by myself. No. The wisdom of oneness, Prajna, will help us to realize that we're not, that what we're going through is not going to last forever. And unfortunately, like I said, it's easy to get caught up in these delusions and to let our conditioning that it's us in here and everyone else out there, we can get caught up in that really easily. And an analogy I thought of as I was thinking through this is, a few years ago I bought a VR headset. I was like, this will be kind of fun, go through some VR experiences and things like you go down into the ocean in a shark cage and you see all this aquatic life, and then the shark comes out and attacks you, and it's really intense, and it really fools the senses into thinking that all of this stuff is real. And of course I wanted all my friends and family to check this thing out, so I was like, come on over and you got to see this and experience this. And one of my friends came over, and he was doing a thing where you're like on a haunted roller coaster going all over the place, and there's all these monsters and just scary, awful things jumping out at you, and you have to shoot it like a carnival ride. And he's there in a chair in front of the TV with his headset on, and I decide to take a video of him about how ridiculous he's acting, because he's screaming and flailing, and and he has the earphones and the helmet on. And then I showed him the video when he came out, and he takes off everything and takes a look, and we both had to laugh at the way he was behaving, because the way he was acting outwardly, physically, was a manifestation of everything that he thought he was experiencing, everything that he thought to be true in that moment. And isn't that, in a roundabout way, sort of what it's like for us when we believe that we're separate, when we believe that there's no way out, that people are out to get us, or that these people are our enemies, or that we don't have a common interest. And we act in a way that, when you realize what is true and the fact that we are all connected, it seems really apart from what is real. And so this wisdom, this wisdom of the sword of wisdom, right, of non-duality, helps us to clear out those delusions of separateness and realize that we are actually all together. And I know, especially in some of the things that we're going through right now, there's so much uncertainty, and people, it's easy to get caught up in the sense of, well, I'm just going to stay over here. And I'm going to kind of continue to build this wall and roof of opinions about what I believe, and it's going to keep me safe because, well, I'm in the right, and everyone out there, they're just crazy. I don't know what it is that they're thinking. And we kind of shore up all these delusions of separateness and us versus them mentality. And I even know in my training, I would oftentimes come to Sensei Tony and say, like, look, with all of this stuff that's going on, like, what's the teaching? Like, what can I tell people? What's the right opinion to have that I can share with people, and people will think, oh, this is great. What a great thing to know and learn and be aware of. And again and again, I realized that it's not about having that opinion. It's not about feeding into that delusion and bolstering those separations by saying, well, here's the right thing to believe, and that these people are right and these people are wrong. But it's about recognizing that we're not separate, and that if someone is really angry in a moment, that I'm not separate from them, and that I can understand what it's like to be angry. Or if someone's really sad and upset because they lost something, or things are changing, that I know what it's like to be lost and scared and to go through change. And that my goal as a teacher, and as someone who wants to live nobly, is not to reinforce those differences, but to come together and realize, like, hey, we're all suffering. How can I help? And when I think about those people in terms of being separate from me, it's really hard to act in a compassionate way. But when I realize I'm not separate, and I practice wisdom, I realize that compassion is a very natural thing that flowers out of that realization. And that's the important thing about this teaching of prajna, this practice of wisdom, is that it's not something that you just need to sit on and know. Like, oh, I know that all phenomena are empty of separateness, permanence. I know that we're all one. It needs to influence the way that you act. And in our practice, we have these three practices of oneness, and the ways that the wisdom of non-duality manifests itself. One is a calming clarity, this realization that you're not alone and by yourself. It's this practice of creative change, like we talked about, that manifests out of the understanding of impermanence, so that, hey, when one thing ends, it gives us an opportunity to build something else, to create something else. A creative experimentation, we sometimes refer to it. Like, hey, this hasn't been working, or this is no longer possible, so maybe we'll do this. What's possible now because that thing is no longer here, or that thing has ended, be it a good thing or a bad thing, as we may traditionally consider it. And then the third one is compassion. And that's the one that I want to talk about a little bit, that, when we have this recognition of non-separation between ourselves and others, that compassion is a natural result of that. And I love the word compassion. The etymology of the word compassion is, to suffer with. That prefix co, right? Compassion. Or to burn with, going back to that example of burning incense, that the world is on fire, right? And when we practice compassion, we are burning with the other person. We're not saying, oh, you're over there, and boy, that's too bad that you're going through that, right? It's not seeing what someone's going through and then pitying them and saying, oh, I'm so sorry for you. I really hope that things turn around. It's burning with that person and recognizing that what they're experiencing is something that we have experienced, or will experience, or would experience if we were in their shoes. And taking action to relieve that suffering, to work with them, and to help them see a path forward. And the last thing that I wanted to share is from the end of the Heart Sutra, a mantra that we sometimes recite in our liturgy by way of invoking the entire Heart Sutra. And sometimes we chant this mantra, and that mantra is Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhiswaha. And essentially what that means is gone, gone, completely gone, very much completely gone, in essence. And it's talking about gone over as though, going over to the shore of awakening from the shore of suffering, right? Crossing over to the other shore. And we talk about the paramitas as vehicles for help to go beyond to that shore of awakening. But here's the thing. When you learn to live nobly, when you learn the truth of reality, you realize that there's no shore you're going to be there. There's nothing to be acquired. There's nothing you need to get to go over to that other shore. There's no Buddha to become because you're already the Buddha. That is the wisdom of non-duality, the paramita of Prajna in our practice, and how that practice of wisdom comes out in action of compassion for others. So I hope you found these words helpful. If you would like to learn more about what we do, Dragonfly Sangha, or if you would like to speak with someone, please visit our website at asksenseitony.com. And with that, I thank you for your time this evening, and I hope you all have a great week.